Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Husky Hockey Podcast. I'm Weldie, sitting with Andrew. We've got Offseason Extravaganza podcast number, 2, 3 of the offseason. I guess if you count the draft that we just did. And I know everyone's on pins and needles about the draft. Now, I know the results. Andrew, you don't know the results. So where do you think you ended up out of the four of us?
I doubt I was first, but I doubt I was last either. So I'll go third.
Gotcha. Perfect. So we'll have that at the end of towards the end of the show, and we'll also have the snub team that was voted on also by the fans, and there was some interesting omissions. We had to go to a tiebreaker on one of them. Or on actually two of them, we had tiebreakers that we had to go to another round of voting for, and you guys helped with that. So, first thing I want to say is obviously thank you to everyone for really engaging with us for the draft. You guys had some really healthy debates about who was snubbed, and overall good response, and it was a lot of fun. And special thanks also to Go Huskies Woo and Zamora for coming on and banter about Huskies hockey. So that's what makes our fan base wonderful.
It really was a great idea.
So salute to my wife.
Whatever idea that was.
Salute to Teresa. So summer podcast. So I'm going to be, I should have probably done this off air, but let's go a little more relaxed, get a little more calm. I'm going to be drinking, looks like, throwback to the original podcast with sharing what we're drinking that week. I got a summer shandy here, actually.
There you go. I have a Hop Valley Pineapple Stash House.
What?
And it's actually pretty good. It's a hazy IPA. It's actually really good. It's a good summer beer.
Stash like pistachios or just...
I think Stash House is one of their IPAs, and this is just like a pineapple version of it. I'm not positive on that. I usually just like stock up on these when they go on sale. So it's not like I picked this necessarily because I liked it, but it was like for $5 for a 6-pack. But it's actually pretty solid. So I recommend it.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of that. And then after I finished my beer, I thought, what the heck? I also grabbed some bourbon too. So when I'm talking later,
look at you.
So I've got a bourbon and a beer. So I guess I'm a shot away from a George Thorogood, right?
There you go. What's the bourbon?
Right now I went with the Old Forester 1910, which I think actually is right now my top bourbon overall.
Not sure if I've had their bourbon. I think I've had their rye, but I don't believe I've had their bourbon before.
Everything Old Forester makes that I've had has been gold.
It's pretty strong.
It's been incredibly good. So I mean, a lot's happened so far this off. I felt like we have more news this off season than we had last. So we might actually have some real size episodes. As we sometimes go a little bit shorter there in the off season, which I actually we might not have actually, not at all, right?
Keep in mind the episode before the all-time team was our record, nearly 3 hours. And we didn't have a new addition to the conference to discuss. So keep that in mind.
Well, you got a point. So let's talk about that new addition. Right down in your neck of the nape of the woods, Andrew, who's been basking in 115-degree heat, which feels like for about 3 weeks now, is going to have a new NCHC team right in his backyard. His heart's always going to be in St. Cloud State, but they're off. Arizona State's coming into the conference, and was voted on unanimously by all of the schools. And yeah, they're going to start here, not this season, obviously, but actually the season after, which was a little bit of a surprise to me that they're coming in that early.
2024-25 season, we expand to 9 teams in the NCHC.
I can't believe I dropped the ball on that one. Like it was.
I mean, we're 5 minutes in. I realized I was pushing it a little bit, but I figured that button is pretty close based on how much we use it. So I'll give you a second there. But
yeah, it was.
So yeah,
it was on a different screen. We're in off-season form here, I guess, on the podcast.
Yeah, you got to give us a couple other extra seconds. But so yeah, coming in next year. Where do we start here? This was the second time that they had applied. We mentioned going back to the first iteration of the podcast, the summer of 2016. They had applied at that time with Mankato, and that application was denied back then. But a lot has changed in Arizona State's situation since then. Most notably, get a new arena. Previously playing in a building that made the MAC look quality. Now in the Mullet, which obviously also houses the Coyotes for the time being as well, and very good facility. It immediately shoots up to the at least top half of the NCHC in terms of quality of facility. Certainly hops St. Cloud and Western Michigan and arguably Miami, maybe. I think Miami might be the next oldest building. Actually, the Ralph might be, but I think the Ralph is still a little better. But anyway, pretty good facility. And also since then, they've made the NCAA tournament. In 2019, they were in line to also make it in 2020 before COVID shut that down. So the quality of the program has definitely risen since that 2016 time, which at that point they had just one season under their belt, and it was a poor one. I mean, their first 3 or 4 years were not good from a wins and losses standpoint. So the last couple of years have been more middling for them. I think they were in the 35 to 40 range in pairwise this year, which was disappointing because I think they had some higher expectations based on being the first year in the Mullet and having a slew of transfer players join them this year. So I think their finish this year was disappointing in terms of what the expectations they had coming into the year. But so quality of the team, we're talking about facility hopping a couple of teams in the NCHC. Quality of play also hops a couple of teams in the conference. Again, most likely Miami, which doesn't take much to hop that bar when it comes to wins and losses of late. But my point is I wouldn't expect Arizona State to immediately assume the role of doormat in this conference. I still think Miami's got that on lockdown for the time being. So those two big points have risen their profile to the point where they were an attractive get for not only the NCHC, but other conferences as well. And we talked about this around this time last year. One of our summer podcasts was debating future realignment, and Arizona State's obviously a big part of that. And my hunch at that point was the Big Ten made the most sense because they had been contracting with them for things like officials, on-ice discipline. They played the 2020-2021 season, which was the season kind of in the pod for the NCHC. Arizona State spent that entire season on the road playing Big Ten teams because that was really the only chance that they would be able to play anybody. So just with their previous interactions with the Big Ten and the fact that they're a national huge university, it more fits in line with the profile of the other Big Ten schools. But I don't know if that ever made it to the level of serious discussions regarding Arizona State joining the Big Ten for real. I'm not sure if those discussions were ever broached. I always heard there was the rumor that I think it's something called the AAU, which is not the like sports organization, but it's something academic based. It's like an association of colleges based on like your doctoral research. And what the hunch was that Arizona State was not a member of that. So that's like a big check in the negative column for Arizona State, because Big Ten schools are a part of this academic organization.
Wasn't AAU the college that Tommy Mansky's defensive drills that Fred McGriff, weren't they back to back AAU national champions?
Well, that's the other AAU, like AAU basketball. Like, yeah, this is a different
Gotcha.
AAU, and it's got nothing to do with sports. It's more your academic
Nothing to
chops.
do with Fred McGriff and his hat that was on crooked.
I don't believe so, but that's a really good poll for us 90s kids.
Every Gen Zer is going to be like, who is Fred McGriff?
This is the instructional video that gets results.
And
Google it.
Google the crime
Probably
dog.
on YouTube. Yep. Good stuff.
That commercial's
heard,
like a core memory back there for me for some reason. But I think actually for a lot of people.
He's wearing like a blue trucker cap. Right?
And it's not on straight.
And looking, it looks just as hip as we're describing it.
Even back then.
Right. God, wasn't there like a catchphrase too, or a slogan of some sort? I have to go down the rabbit hole now that you've brought it up. It's a good memory, good nostalgia. But yeah, so the idea that Arizona State didn't qualify in terms of academics to join the Big Ten, I thought was a tenuous argument, because I believe Nebraska doesn't fit that bill either, but they allowed them to join football. Put it this way, if they wanted something like Alabama for their football program, I don't think that they would make a academic requirement to allow Alabama to join the Big Ten. I just think that, and university presidents are the ones that vote on membership of universities to sports conferences. It's not just an AD thing. You have to have the university bigwigs sign off on it as well. So perhaps that was a sticking point. But I feel like if they were a more higher profile hockey program, the Big Ten Hockey Conference would have been more interested. And I think that was their ultimate downfall as far as they didn't get into that conference. I don't know how much they tried to formally apply to the Big Ten. That's all sort of unknown for me. We just know that they did try to get into the NCHC 7 years ago, were denied then, and now are coming in. Now, so the interesting part is several interesting things, but we'll kind of go one by one through some of these. So first of all, no other announcement regarding a 10th team, or we talked about this one of the last podcasts about Miami's role here. Their AD being on record last year saying, we don't really like the idea of going out to Arizona and sharing a conference with them either. But as you mentioned, this was a unanimous vote. All 8 existing schools authorized Arizona State to enter the conference. So that means Miami was on board with this. So at this point, we are just at 9. There is no Miami's leaving in a year, or we don't have a 10th team lined up. So I guess the first question is, how do you think that settles it? Do you think they're going to stick at 9 for now, or do you think they're actively going to try to get a 10th team in the very near future? Or do you think Miami's going to be like, you know what, see ya, we want to go to the CCHA? What do you think the next move? Because from my perspective, I doubt that they're going to stick at 9 for a while, and they're going to want to find a 10th team.
Yeah,
or that Miami wants to leave. But I mean, the thing there is, it only took 75% of schools to okay Arizona State getting in. So they technically didn't need Miami's vote one way or the other. 6 of the 8 teams is all they needed to vote them into the conference. And maybe Miami said it would look weird, and it doesn't matter anyway if we vote no, and it would look weird if we were the only ones that didn't. So might as well make it look unanimous.
Yeah.
and we can kick the can down the road whether or not they actually do want to try to move to another conference. So my hunch is, barring Miami bailing, which I don't think is a high percentage chance, maybe 20%. I mean, classify that as high or low based on what you think. But I would say the next move is to find a 10th team.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to want to stick with 9 for a while.
Because I've always thought all of the, I guess, hubbub around Miami and all the whispers, I've always kind of thought that was a little overblown. Now, obviously, that column or that sit down with the AD from Miami, there were a couple things in there that kind of did raise some eyebrows. And a lot of it talk also was about the time zone thing, which I think was more of a figure of speech more than actually playing at a later time, because obviously it'd be mountain time. It's just the travel, but even the travel, I mean, what they play in, it's Tempe, like that's probably easier travel than a lot of places to get to for Miami, to travel just to Arizona, to travel to Arizona State, because you just fly into the Sky Harbor, is that the airport that's called?
Phoenix.
So I mean, It's just right there. So, but I mean, you're looking at NCHC going to have 9 teams. You have the Big Ten, 7 teams. And then you have the CCHA, that's going to have 9 teams with Augustana joining. So, it's just kind of
Hockey East and Atlantic Hockey too. Actually, ECAC will be the only conference with an even number of teams.
That's just
barring any future realignment.
So that's just kind of a weird imbalance here that's going on that I think is, fairly easily, can be remedied, but at the same time that there's all these politics or drama of like, who do you pick, who moves over, why do they move over? And I do think adding a 10 team would be ideal, but I guess I don't know where that shoe would fall or where it would go.
Yeah.
So
who's your 10th team?
So now what, now I can't remember. Did Lindenwood, did they say that they were going to go anywhere?
I've heard nothing about them.
And then obviously you got
I've heard nothing about any of the other independents like Long Island, Alaska,
and
Stonehill. Haven't heard anything regarding those programs. Circling back to what we mentioned about Arizona State's first application, the other team that applied with them, Minnesota State. I think last year, if this all happened last year, I think Minnesota State would be my leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, as far as who would be the 10th team. With Hastings leaving, though, kind of throws the program into a little bit of limbo from a competition standpoint. I think if Hastings was still there, I think they'd be a lot more attractive. Maybe that's unfair to Minnesota State, but I think with a new coach and a fairly new roster next year, I'm not sure if we can pencil in Minnesota State as the prohibitive favorite in the CCHA as we have in the last half decade plus with Hastings there. If I have a leader in the clubhouse as far as who the 10th team is going to be, I'm not going to say it's Lindenwood. I'm not going to say it's any of the independent teams. I'm actually going to pick St. Thomas as my leader in the clubhouse for the reason that they're getting a new facility. It would be once they get their new facility built, which I believe is going to open in 2025. And so I think that makes it attractive to them. I think the fact that they're in a central location, much like how you argued that traveling to Tempe is an easier task for a program like Miami or something who has to fly, easier to fly into Tempe/Phoenix than it is like if you're going to Duluth, you're probably traveling to MSP and then taking a bus for a couple of hours. You're doing that to St. Cloud. Grand Forks, did they travel to Fargo, fly to Fargo, and then bus up to Grand Forks? I don't know if they were flying directly into Grand Forks. Omaha seems pretty simple. And for them, for Miami at least, Kalamazoo is a bus ride. But Kalamazoo for other teams like St. Cloud, if they're not flying, or if they are flying, there's going to be some driving involved there based on if they're going to Grand Rapids or Detroit. So what I'm saying is St. Thomas is a fairly easy travel city because you're right. It's right in the Twin Cities. And so there's no additional leg of travel, which I think is easier for those far-flung programs that would have to fly to Minnesota to do that. For St. Cloud and Duluth and probably North Dakota, this is a bus trip for them, so they'd be all for that. I mean, St. Cloud would love to have another Minnesota team in their conference. So you'd be able to placate the closer programs by adding St. Thomas. And you also have a guy like Blasi there who's coached in the conference before. The big question with them is competition. All right, because they really haven't been a real serious team competitively since they've started. But they're brand new at the D1 level, and they seem to be improving each year that they've been part of NCAA and Division I at least. And they have a ton of resources. So I think they check more boxes. And they're also, I think, the Summit League affiliation. I don't know how official that is, the crossover between the Summit League and the NCHC, but there's significant, important people involved in the Summit League, i.e. Josh Fenton, who has plenty of dealings with the NCHC. So I think that relationship is also a good indicator that they might do some business as a conference partner in the future. And so, yeah.
Do you think, like you said, being a new team, being in a conference, do you think they would be switching that quickly? Like, what would be the draw for them?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they're more from a competition-wise standpoint, they're probably better off in the CCHA just for the short term because it's going to be easier for them to jump into top half of the standings, let's say, in the CCHA than they are the NCHC. So that is certainly a factor. And I don't even know, like you're talking about percentages as far as like if Miami wants to leave, and I said 20% there. I don't know if I'd put the percentage of St. Thomas jumping the NCHC at more than 50%, probably 30 to 40% range. Probably right under that, I'd probably still put Mankato because I think they do have a longer track record of high-end competition. But again, that's sort of in flux now with the coaching change. So I'm not saying that these are imminent moves. And I've heard Lindenwood, we had a question about them again this week, and you've mentioned them as well in the past. Compare Lindenwood to St. Thomas. If you're the NCHC, which program would you want between those two? I would want St. Thomas. If I'm having to pick between those two, because they have a better facility lined up, and they're a much bigger school with way bigger resources. They could definitely afford the buy-in fee if there was one.
Right
even
next
though
to the
they're not
face-off.
Right next to the Frozen Face-Off, and
then you've got a lot of
even though they might
from a lot of schools that are in the Twin Cities now that are right there. So, I mean,
they might not be so far apart competition-wise. I mean, Lindenwood literally was the bottom team in pairwise this year. St. Thomas was what? Low 40s, high 50s. I mean, St. Thomas is not good, and so that might be the biggest factor for them not joining, or at least maybe not joining right away. But I think once they get their new facility, and then also right around that time, I think it was it 5 years of a postseason ineligible period, kind of a waiting period, jumping from D1 to D3 to D1. I think they're ineligible to make the NCAA tournament for 5 years starting in 2021. So it'll be right around that 25-26 time period where that will be lifted. And that postseason ineligibility period can crimp them from a recruiting standpoint as well. I mean, who really wants to go there if they have no chance of making the tournament? So once that's lifted, that's going to be right around the time that they open their new arena, and they've got a lot of resources, advantages like that I would say in 10 years, St. Thomas will be a pretty viable program. And so maybe it's one of those things where you lock them, whereas Arizona State sort of had to prove it. You might be able to offer St. Thomas a sort of an early step into the program where they don't necessarily need to prove it competition-wise, before they offer them a spot because they have so many other advantages going in their favor. So I think so that would be my early best guess as far as who is a 10th team. Now, again, if Miami says, hey, we want to bail, then maybe they stick at 8 and they don't move on past that. Who knows? Perhaps Miami will make the situation, will help dictate the situation based on it. But I do have to say that I give you the credit for when we brought that up at one of the last podcasts about this Miami situation. You were like, there's a lot of smoke, but I don't see a fire here. And comments on some fans' blog last year, I think has been maybe not overblown, but kind of, because like I said, they voted to let Arizona State in, which sort of goes against what the AD's sort of preference against adding Arizona State was last year. So we just don't have the tangible evidence that they really want to move. Mm-hmm. And so I think the Occam's razor that you were sort of hinting at was correct. Again, that might change, but we just don't have enough evidence that makes me think that they're really itching to leave anytime soon. So we'll see. I would say the easy choice would be to move to 10, but the wheels are in motion there. And so I guess we can move on to...
with the new alignment in adding a 9th team, we've got new natural rivals. Yep. Or I guess designated rival. So what I want to move into is the scheduling implications. Yeah. So there's going to be St. Cloud now is going to be kind of we're going to have 4 games, no matter what, against North Dakota and Minnesota Duluth. And the other pods, so to speak, as they used, were Colorado College, Denver, and Arizona State, and then Omaha, Miami, and Western Michigan. And then the other, they're not going to add any more conference games, so that's going to stay
still at 24.
Still going to stand pat, but there's just going to be more teams that you only see once a year. So it's even when Arizona State comes in, we might have to wait to book our tickets down to Arizona State. St. Cloud might not even be there the first year, because we might just have a home series with them, depending on how everything with the schedule shakes out. So, how do you feel? Our designated rival before was Minnesota Duluth. We've played them, it feels like, about 30 times over the last 3 years. So it's
not far off.
So it's going to be, I think that these are, kind of the ones that make the most sense. I know a lot of people on my timeline from Omaha fans, they were a little bit ticked that they felt they got tossed in with the afterthoughts.
It's the one outlier.
Yeah.
But there really was no other better solution, I think. It's natural to you got to have the 2 Colorado teams in the same pod, and then makes the most sense to put them with Arizona State because they're the closest by far to them. I suppose Omaha to Denver might be closer, but you're not going to have Arizona State with Michigan, Western Michigan, or Miami, or with any of the Minnesota teams or North Dakota. It just makes the most sense to have Arizona State with the Colorado teams. Yeah. And then it makes the most sense to have the 2 Minnesota teams together. Natural to put in North Dakota there based on geography. It just kind of leaves the other 3 there. Miami and Western makes sense for them to be in the same pod. Just Omaha was the outlier that someone needed to do it. I would say I might, if in terms of competition, I wouldn't mind being in Omaha's pod, or I wouldn't mind being in Miami's pod to guarantee 4 games a year against them. Western Michigan's been a little bit better, but I would say,
I don't know. We'll get into a preview, but I think Western Michigan's prime for a fall, but
I'm not there. They've had really good seasons, but they're not a program that I just give the benefit of the doubt automatically to. So, yeah, they could be really good, but they could also be sort of middle of the pack too. So,
and it was so weird when they
I'll
were
say
talking
this.
so much about like the fans that I follow and whatnot. They were talking so much about like attendance and whatnot, and like it's not going to really spark. But it's like you've had one of the highest attendance in college hockey. You know, they were averaging about 6,000 a game. So like, you know,
More than that, I think.
yeah, a little bit more than that. So like winning helps that, and winning,
Right.
you know, you're gonna maybe it's a little bit less of a pizzazz, sure, that it's not against North Dakota, but at the same
Like,
time,
you didn't need North Dakota their fans to fill up your building because you're doing it on your own. What was it? They were playing
St.
like
Cloud
St. Lawrence
needs
in the
North
Christmas
Dakota
break,
to fill up their building.
right? So I'll say this about the pod. So you got 4 games each against your other 2 pod mates, I guess is what we're going to call them. And then for each of the other 2 pods, I would assume this. I didn't get this clear in the Schlossman article, who sort of wrote all these details up. I would assume of the other 2 pods, you're going to have 1 team in that pod you're going to see 4 times. And then the other 2, you're just going to see 1 series each. And I would hope 1 on the road and 1 at home for both other pods that you're seeing. The way that he phrased it in the article made it seem like whoever you're seeing 4 games a year is going to be determined. Like, I don't want it to be like you're going to have the Denver CC Arizona pod. You're going to play 4 games against Denver and CC, and then 1 series against Arizona. And then the other division, you're only playing 1 series against all 3 of those teams. I would doubt that's I would hope that they're going to do one team per other pod.
That makes sense.
You're going to get 4 games apiece. That would make the most sense. So if it's going to be like that, you're guaranteed to go to every other program once every 2 years, at least. Sometimes you'll see them, but back-to-back years going to that facility. So if you're saying trying to go down from St. Cloud to Arizona State, hopefully what I'm saying is I hope there's not going to be more than 1 year that you don't go to a program. Sure. Like there's not going to be 2 straight years where you don't go somewhere. I feel like it's the way that they've split up these pods into 3. It feels like that's all in service of trying to equally spread the home and road series against the other teams that are not in your pod. It seems like that's going to be the plan. We just haven't heard.
Yeah. And I feel that would also be the best
plan
for pairwise implications too, because that would still be balanced with, you know, your common opponents. I mean, they would at least play 4 times against, you know, everybody else. So it would be a lot more balanced when it comes to that. So.
Right. And if you are a team like Miami who's complaining potentially about travel, this way you're guaranteed to not take 3 of those long road trips. If you're talking about the Denver CC Arizona pod, at most you're taking 2 trips into that region. Or maybe you're either taking 1 or 2 trips per year down there rather than, I mean, currently most years they're going to go to Denver and CC both in the same year. So this way it could potentially even sort of alleviate some of that travel. And from their perspective too, Western Michigan's their only bus ride in conference, and Omaha I think is fairly easy to get to. I mean, you can just fly into the Omaha airport. So I think that wouldn't be like a schlep of a trip for them. So it makes the most sense. I'll say this. I think St. Cloud's I think that's the pod of death. If we're going to
Women's World Cup right around the corner.
Any one of these.
Group of death.
I mean,
it's teams that I hate. So, I mean, yeah, I wish them all death.
2 other heels, but then also add St. Cloud there. I mean, other than Denver, they're the other 3 programs in this conference that have had the most consistent success on the ice and consistent NCAA tournament appearances. And just by the virtue of that alone, St. Cloud and Duluth and North Dakota kind of de facto will have the toughest schedule on an annual basis in the conference based on the fact that they're guaranteed to see each other 4 times apiece. And so again, I'm for this setup. I like the idea of that, as you mentioned, although we have our problems with North Dakota fans in St. Cloud. that
And you've
gate,
got your problems with watching Minnesota Duluth play in general.
Yes, I do. But that gate, the North Dakota games in St. Cloud, is a boon to St. Cloud's books, so to speak. So it helps them out from that regard, and Duluth as well to a lesser extent. I mean, but that's a good rivalry, and you're always going to see some in-state fans travel to St. Cloud for those games as well between Duluth and the Huskies. But just from a competitive standpoint, I mean, like I said, I'm looking at that Miami, Western, and Omaha pod. I mean, that's I think the weakest, and then the Denver pod, just with the by virtue of Denver alone, would probably be the second toughest. So there will be a sort of unbalanced schedule. It's like that Miami, Western, and Omaha. That's like the AL Central of the NCHC. Whereas I think St. Cloud's in the AL East. And so do we want to, I was thinking, because they're not going to have divisions per se. This is just more of an informal pod structure for their schedule. So I don't think they're going to go out of their way to name the pods.
There's no way.
But wouldn't it be kind of fun to name the pods?
Should we?
I would say
Come up with our own names for each grouping?
The North for St. Cloud's, or do we because we can't really do directions because the Western Miami Omaha one throws it all out of whack.
Exactly. Can we call ours? Call ours the WCHA? How about we
could do that?
The McNaughton region.
Yes, and then you could call. That's good. And then I like the Miami, Western, and Omaha. They all used to be the CCHA together.
Well, we have to call it like
so
the
you could do maybe the Mason,
the OG CCHA. The original CCHA.
But then what? And then what? The what's for the? You can't call it the Southwest.
The CCHA, their old tournament was the Super 6. So how about we call them the Super 3?
I like it.
So we got the WCHA division, the Super 3
we just call it
division.
The Super, and then the final for the North, because that was the final 5. But so final 3, but again, everyone's 3, so we just Super, final, and then Southwest. We got a lot of Spanish-speaking population. How about Trace? The
Trace division,
Supero Trace. Walking a fine line there, but my Spanish is getting better slowly but surely. But yeah, we could have some fun with that. If any of you listeners out there have an upgrade from our terrible idea, please let us know. But we can have some fun with that.
I am all for it. So, what was the trophy for the CCHA? Do you remember the original?
Well, I know it was I think it was the Mason Cup. They might have. That's for their conference tournament. Conference tournament champion is the Mason Cup, which I believe they brought over from the old CCHA. Perhaps that was like the McNaughton where it was the regular season champ. But I think that was the conference. It currently is the conference championship. I think. I'm not sure. I know CCHA has something that's named after Ron Mason, who used to be the Michigan State coach for many years. So you could use something with that. But yeah, and I mean, Omaha wouldn't have been in the CCHA. Well, they were in the CCHA longer than they were the WCHA. Yep. But less than maybe 10 years, maybe less than that. They were only in the WCHA.
They were in it from 99 to 2010.
Okay, so 10, 11 years. And then in the WCHA for 3 years?
Yeah, I believe so.
They are they've kind of dabbled in a bunch of different conferences.
Yeah, no kidding. Find a home.
So the well-traveled. Well, they're the Mavericks. They roam freely on the range. And so they're always trying to find a home. It's hard to brand. They're unbranded cattle. So it's hard to track them down. So you have the.
I wonder if there's going to be like some kind of a showcase then between the like if we've got an odd number in these 3 conferences, like maybe like CCHA and NCHC can form a partnership where whoever the teams that are done will square off in a non-conference for like a traveling conference trophy, something along those lines.
Well. That's another that's another thing I wanted to bring up was, well, a couple things. We're going to talk about the tournament implications. That's one thing. The NCHC.
Go back to the Super Six.
I'm thinking Super 8, the hotel chain. Maybe we could get a sponsorship
by Tom Bodett.
Motels. I'm thinking Motel 6.
Motel
Super
6,
8.
not Super 8.
Combine the two. But so there's the tournament implications that I want to get to. But then
just because this is, an aside, and of course, but we do this. But I remember an episode I was listening to of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR, and Tom Bodett was on it, and he actually said, "We'll leave the light on for you," and I flipped out. And he said
he was actually like on the game show.
Well, he was.
So he wasn't just reading his ad.
Correct. Copy. Yeah, because he's like one of the.
He's an actual human being. I always just kind of feel he's more like a robot who just is an avatar for the motel chain, and he's like a conglomeration of like 3 different humans.
He's a real guy. He's on the panel quite a bit for one of the 3. Yeah,
really?
Quite a bit. Yeah.
I don't know if I've actually ever listened to that. I've heard of it.
Wait, don't tell me.
I don't really know the format
Wait,
though.
Wait, don't tell me. It's a wonderful radio show. If anyone has the
wonderful,
yeah, it's so good. It's
you're going to use that adjective. That sounds
highly recommended. Podcast, just podcast 1 episode. I think you'll be a fan.
I might have to do that.
You'll be a fan. I mean, it's trivia, so I'm really surprised that you're not a fan.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of hot. I run hot and cold with trivia, but that's a different topic. That's a topic for a summer podcast that doesn't have.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. What conference or tournament implications?
Well, we're gonna get to that, but also you mentioned like the scheduling.
One team will be done with
like
their
an affiliation
schedule before everyone else.
Right, and I guarantee you that is going to stick in the craw of coaches. Mm-hmm. The fact that because you got 9 teams, one team is going to have a bye weekend, at least in conference, in that last weekend of the year prior to the conference playoffs starting. So I wouldn't be shocked if coaches are going to be like, you got to play on that weekend. And if you're the team that's not scheduled to play a conference matchup that weekend, you got to find a non-conference team to do that against. Now, the good thing is we've mentioned Big Ten, CCHA, at least those 2 other conferences in the West also have odd numbers. So someone in those conferences is also not going to play a conference matchup.
Plenty of independents
in that weekend. Got a couple more independents too. So I think you have the teams, and if you wanted to play a series with an Eastern team too, I mean there's the Hockey East and Atlantic Hockey are also at an odd number. So with Atlantic Hockey and Big Ten, that means that Penn State's playing an Atlantic Hockey team that last weekend. If they get a bye week, we know that they're hitting up the Atlantic Hockey. So maybe our options are a little limited. If Penn State's got that bye weekend.
Did you see Notre Dame's schedule? I think it was Notre Dame.
I didn't.
Good Lord.
I was actually looking because Big Ten's usually the last conference to announce their schedules, even their non-conference a lot of times. And I didn't see a Penn State schedule because I was curious to see how much they loaded it up with Atlantic Hockey. But they didn't have theirs out. But then some of the Atlantic teams have. So I was like going to Mercyhurst's to see if they had scheduled Penn State or whatever. I saw I think Army's got Penn State. There was less Atlantic teams than I thought that had scheduled Penn State. But a lot of these teams haven't announced. A lot of the Atlantic teams haven't announced their schedules either. So I'm anticipating that Penn State's got a lot of Atlantic teams coming up next year. But I couldn't verify because I was kind of doing it individually by program. But yeah, I didn't see Notre Dame's. I think I remember we talked. They got Augustana, so
they got Augustana, obviously at home. But it's just the fact that they have a 1 away non-conference game, and it's against Rochester. RIT.
Just a single
one
game.
Single game.
Not even a series.
One game. Home against Clarkson.
What
home
else do they
against
have?
BU. Home against Mercyhurst. They, I guess, have one single home game against Boston College, so I guess that's something.
Typically play them every year.
But
Catholic
yeah,
war.
right, exactly. Catholic on Catholic crime. But yeah, one single game there at RIT is their only away game.
That's it. They don't like go up to another team in that region. Nope. It's just a one-off.
At least that's what's announced as of right now. But they had like a fancy infographic at it, and I just laughed. What a joke.
Yeah, that's not so much. So, getting back to the scheduling implications.
Anyway, back to the fish story.
You're gonna choke on that bourbon. I made you laugh here right when you're about to take the drink.
That's so, I'll taste it twice. That's fine.
That's the disaster zone. That's right. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's. This is true. Wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of, if not official agreement, unofficial agreement between coaches of at least the Western conferences, let's say, to ensure. Because we're not talking NCHC now. Just imagine Motzko having the idea that someone's got a bye week before the playoffs. It's just not going to fly. So, and I would imagine there's coaches in the NCHC that feel the same way. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is made somewhat official or some
maybe
sort of
they have to pinky promise that they'll have a really hard practice that week. So they'll be fatigued.
See how that works. Yeah. So you're leaving it to them to be on their honor.
Just scouts
no
honor.
Potential hiccups there. Yeah. But so then the tournament and then the playoffs would be the last sort of, schedule implications that need to be ironed out because nothing has been made official with this regard. But something's got to be done with playoffs. Right now, 8 teams, it's real easy. Because it's just you play 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, so on for the first round on campus. And then the 4 winners of those series go on to the neutral site tournament at the X. But now with 9, you got to do something with that ninth team. I suppose the easiest solution would be to just dump the 9th team and then continue on as you had been, just doing 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, and so on. Or you could do what the Big Ten does, and they give the number 1 seed a bye for the first week. So instead of them playing, you get 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, and 4 versus 5. And then the lowest remaining seed out of that first round plays the number 1 seed second weekend. In this way, you're kind of giving the first round bye to the conference champions, kind of a reward for winning the regular season title. The problem with implementing that in the NCHC is the fact that the Big Ten plays all of their tournament on campus. So what I would imagine the hiccup...
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only 1 game, right?
For the second and the third round of the Big Ten. So the first round is 2 out of 3, but then after that, the semifinals and the finals are just single games. Also at the rink of the higher seed. Which that's not what those rounds are played at the neutral site at the X for the NCHC. So I'm less confident that format would be adopted by the NCHC because of this. Instead of giving the first place team the reward of a bye and then home games for the rest of the playoffs, you'd give them the bye, which might be a reward, but you're also cutting them off from revenue from hosting playoff games. Yep. So it's like, if St. Cloud were to win the tournament and then they weren't able to get extra revenue from hosting a playoff series, that's not ideal.
And then you would have to, not only extra revenue from, fans coming in, but also season ticket holders who prepay for that. Right. You would have to most of them would roll into the next year, but if they don't, you'd have to pay that out of pocket.
Right. Now I could see some coaches being like, you know what, we get the week off. That's more valuable than the gate. I can anticipate programs like St. Cloud being like, no, the gate is very important and we shouldn't lose potential revenue by winning the conference regular season. So that could be a split issue. My suggestion, how to handle this would be as such. Have a play-in game with the 8-9 teams. So who's ever 8th hosts a one and done. If we're starting the playoffs on the Friday, have the one and done be either Tuesday or Wednesday prior to the playoffs starting. One and done at the number 8 team hosting the 9th team. Whoever wins that would then slot into the 8th seed and then go on the road to play the 1 seed in the first round on that Friday on short rest. Yes, you're playing short rest, but you were either the 8th or the 9th team. You don't really deserve a whole lot of rest in that case. And in this scenario, one other team gets some gate revenue. Either who has ever 8th place gets another gate, gets another day where they can open the gates and bring in that revenue. So it's more revenue. Whereas prior to this, we weren't playing such a play-in game. So it's just extra revenue that we're adding. And then in this scenario, everyone else would still be playing on the regular schedule, and the number 1 seed would be able to collect their revenue from a first-round playoff series. And you're also including all 9 teams. You're not dumping the 9th place team. They still get to participate in the tournament, and they have a chance to go on, and they could win the whole thing if they wanted to. So that's why I think that is my best solution to this. What's yours? How are you thinking they should handle the tournament?
Love your solution, and that's something even that I never even thought of.
That's why we have this podcast. It's my brilliant ideas.
And the only thing is that you have, there you go, is that you have you play Friday, Saturday. I'm thinking of, the 8 and 9, or mostly the 9, like logistically, planning a trip somewhere in a 2-day span to also, school-wise studies.
It'll be an inconvenience.
Yeah,
my comeback would be don't finish 9th. Would be my comeback.
That's I don't disagree with that. Yes. But
think about this too. This could be one positive or negative based on how you look at it. There could be some battling between 7th and 8th. Team in 7th being like, you know what? We want that play-in game. We'd rather be 8th than 7th. Think about it. We could be 7th, get our ass kicked by the 2 seed, and just go home. Or we could drop to 8th, play a meaningless, relatively speaking, play-in game, collect some revenue for that home game, and then get our ass kicked by the 1 seed. So there could be some shenanigans with that. If there was like a 1 point difference between 7th and 8th last weekend of the regular season, you could see some creative line shuffling and third string goalie appearances, some possible shenanigans there, and you don't want to create a solution where there's a potential to have a team think that they can gain by losing. So that is it's certainly a negative in that. Although, like I said, it might be entertaining to watch.
In the words of Workaholics, let's get weird.
Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird.
Let's get weird. That would definitely do it. We can get real weird with it real quick. I like it. I root for all chaos, so I'm all for that. My original thought was that 1 seed would get a bye, and then you would go through 2, 9, et cetera, and then you would have 5 teams, right?
That's another possibility of doing it.
So then
you could just expand the XL.
XL. So you would have you would go back to a Final 5 type format of before the third or after the third place game was eliminated. So it would just be the Final 5 teams. Get that trademark back. Bring back the actual name of the Final. Probably Brad Berry has that trademark, or Brad Berry's daughter or whatever has that trademark anyway. Wrestle it away from her, and then bring back that whole because I still call it the final. I'm like a boomer when it comes to that. I still mess up when trying to call it the frozen face off. So
see, I think that's if not
so then the conference gets
as
the
good
whole
of an
revenue,
idea.
From all
Yeah,
of it.
that's and perhaps there's a way for them to say we'll give the number 1 seed a little higher of a percentage of the revenue because you didn't get a home game in the playoffs. Perhaps there could be an arrangement there because I think for a lot of fans, it would be an attractive proposal to get an extra day of the final of what we're referring to as the final 5 to get one extra playing
Trademark
game,
Bradbury,
which would be on Thursday.
assuming.
And so now so I like that idea. And I wouldn't be shocked if something like that is adopted. My hesitation there would be look at what attendance was last year, especially the non-North Dakota section of that tournament. Very poorly attended. And it's not like 2007 where that Thursday play-in game, we're still counting on the overflow of everyone else coming and Michigan Tech fans coming no matter what. It's times have changed. And I just hope, I just fear that renting out the X for another night and then having 4,000 people show up for a playing game between Western Michigan and CC ain't going to be as great of a draw as it was in, the thick of the WCHA days. So there's maybe some more risk involved with that. But from a nostalgia standpoint, I do think that would be attractive as well. And like I said, if there's a way to pay off, so to speak, the number 1 seed for not having a couple of home games the week before, give them a little bit more higher chunk of the revenue, perhaps that could suffice for those coaches and programs who wouldn't like the idea of losing out on some revenue. So yeah, I would say that's as good of a solution as mine. But yeah, so we'll see.
Mine is a lot less
up
weird,
in the air,
which
but yet it's more tradition rich, and so
tradition
that hockey's an old school sport. There's some that really would be attracted to that sort of concept.
I guess we'll see.
Do you
have a favorite song from Fiddler on the Roof? And is it tradition?
I have not. I've never seen it. I have been watching this 71 through 73 movies in that time period.
Okay, so you're
I've
past
seen
Watergate
quite a lot
right now, right? Or is this
No.
pre-Watergate?
Not. Well, I mean, Watergate technically has happened, but it hasn't really been it hasn't reached Hollywood yet, so to speak. And so, but in this time period, I'm sort of wrapping it up, but I kind of want to at least pick off the best box office. So I was looking at the top 20 box office movies from each of those years. And I might have, 10 left between all 3 years. One of them is Fiddler on the Roof. I've never seen it before. And I like musicals. I don't love them. That one's like 3 hours long. Yeah. I feel like I want to see it, though, because
and just like every musical,
it's one of those
very front heavy. I mean, I love musicals, but man, some of those second acts drag on. And I mean, Music Man, I think is like a prime, like, bullet point. Like, all the good songs are in your top half. Like, get that Wells Fargo wagon out of here. Don't care. Bring back You Got Trouble. Anyway.
So yeah, it's one of those cultural touchstones that I'm aware of. I just have never consumed it.
Gotcha.
So I feel like it would be helpful to at least watch it sometime. So that probably will be sometime in the future. When I do watch it,
let me know.
I'm sure.
I'm sure it's going to be If I Were a Rich Man, because that's my favorite. Even though I like tradition,
I think that. See, you've done the tradition thing before, and I
went right over.
Didn't know that you were doing a reference. That's the name of a song, or is that like a lyric from
the name of the
songs?
I think it's the name of the song.
That gives me more of a reason to watch it, is to circle that square and to get the tradition reference.
Yes.
I thought it was a reference, but I thought it was like a Family Guy reference or
Oh.
something that I just didn't
I
get.
mean,
so
Seth-
would not have guessed Fiddler on the Roof.
Seth
but
MacFarlane pretty
good.
much rips off like every musical anyway in a lot of his references, so he probably did reference it in Family Guy. Speaking
And that's
of
literally what,
Music
like, the
Man,
chorus-
like there's so many people who think Shapoopy is from Family Guy and not from the Music Man because of that whole sequence in one episode of Family Guy.
And see, that's another one. I've never seen The Music Man, but I know some things about it. 76 trombones.
76, you got trouble?
Set in Iowa,
Yep.
right?
River City, Iowa.
And it's about some guy that like, is it kind of like a producer's setup where it's like he makes a show to sort of just get a quick money grab, but it's kind of like a fraud.
I mean,
kind
it's
of
definitely
situation.
fraud. Yeah, he he's essentially kind of just a slimy salesman. So he goes from town to town, sells musical instruments, and then leaves towns before they're delivered with all their money. And he just, then he finds this little podunk town in Iowa and meets Marion the librarian and ends up finding love, and there's more purpose in life and whatnot. So.
A side note too, I have always enjoyed how you pronounce Iowa. Say it again.
What do you mean?
You kind of like Iowa.
Iowa.
Say it.
Iowa.
I like it.
In Music Man, they say Iowa at some points. We're from Iowa. Anyway.
I should know. We should now pronounce that Iowa from.
Well, I mean, we don't need to pronounce it because
forward.
they don't have a college hockey team. So we got plenty of USHL.
True. Not yet. I've heard Iowa is on
right
the
next to
precipice of
Illinois,
announcement.
next to that guy who has been tweeting for about 10 years and trying to sell his account that Illinois is about.
That is correct. Well, we are officially in the ditch right now, and we've got to climb our way out. But yeah, so I think we've touched on like implications here for from Arizona State joining the NCHC. We'll certainly update you as if you're hinging on us for your college hockey.
As you
but
should
once
be.
we find out. Once we find out what those postseason implications are, we'll be sure to discuss them. But sounds like I got a pretty good idea. So if it can be sent to Heather Weems' direction about my 8-9 single game elimination.
I'll talk to her at the next school board meeting.
Do that. Please do, and see if we can get that going. So yeah, I think that's it for the ASU topic, unless you had anything else.
I got nothing. So, I mean, we can switch over to actual SCSU, maybe a little bit of minor roster news. But Leo Gruba, it looks like he is going to be asked to go back for another year. Now, I believe he actually signed his NLI. So he would have to ask permission to get released. Usually in these cases, like if he really wants to go somewhere else, like St. Cloud would or that college would grant it anyway. But
once you sign that, it has to be within a window of you actually coming to campus. That can't be held until next year.
I think it can.
You would have to sign another NLI.
That I don't know. I was under the impression that is just a commitment, like a 1-year commitment to that college. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily the next year or if it's just 1 year in general.
It might need to be renewed. It might not. From what I'm hearing, he seems to be down with this plan as well. It's not like this has been against his will. He feels like he could use another year of seasoning as well. So sounds like they're all on board here. Newsflash, I was wrong on this one. My intuition was telling me that Gruba was going to come.
I think mine was
My intuition thought that he might. My intuition thought that he might be drafted. That did not prove to be true.
But,
so swing and a miss twice on my end.
But who was drafted was Warren Clark.
Yep. Who is also coming in?
Is going to be coming in this fall. He was drafted by St. Cloud South, Tampa Bay.
Yep.
And so him coming in, I mean, I guess in my head, kind of taking Leo Gruba's spot. But we were talking about in the previous podcast before, the draft podcast, that, I mean, this D is solid. And not only that, but like, it's tough to crack. So bringing another freshman, I think, would have been a really big hindrance to really Gruba's development in general. So I think he kind of saw that, too, and being on board with that as well. So, so I was a little bit surprised by that, but I'll keep following him, Gruba especially. Obviously Gavin Thorson, which you could say maybe a little bit surprised he wasn't drafted, but at the same time he's 5'6" or something. I don't think he's that short, but he's, I mean, he's 5'8", 5'9". You're not going to get drafted,
right? And he hasn't played a full year of juniors yet. There's probably a better chance of him getting drafted next year. Exactly. I think. Wouldn't be shocked if I think I'd be surprised if he was not drafted next year. Like, I would put the odds on that he will be drafted eventually, but just not this year. But yeah, Clark, should mention him. I mean, 18 years old, so he's going to be young. Mm-hmm. Big kid. I think he needs to add a little bit of bulk to kind of build out the body a little bit. But like Gruba, guy that's sort of on a fast trajectory here. He's really sort of played his way into, as it turned out, NHL draft status fairly quickly. I believe his recruitment was announced during the year November, December of last year. So Canadian. So we got another Canuck coming to the program. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see him. I was not anticipating him to be on the Huskies so quick. Mm-hmm. And he was drafted in the USHL draft prior to obviously being drafted in the NHL in anticipation of him playing a year at the USHL. He was doing his juniors up in Canada this last year. So no USHL experience, but from what all I can gather, pretty good, pretty solid prospect. And the youth gives me a little pause in that we might see some growing pains. I mean, this is going to be quite the step up in competition and also step up in age as far as his competitors go. Like, he's going to go from playing against fellow 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds to playing against 22, 23, 24-year-olds. And that can be an adjustment.
Fun fact, my wife and I first dance was to the Growing Pains theme song. So that is not actually a lie. That was actually our first dance. So.
Oh, God. This is good. So, yeah. Warren Clark, welcome to the fold.
And from one Clark to another.
Leo Gruba.
Oh. God, man.
Wow. No, I don't want to. I'm not going to do it. Nope. I already did. Do it. I just was saying, Leo Gruba, we will see you next year. Don't move. Don't change your commit.
Yeah, I'm
still really excited to see him play too. So hopefully this time next year we can be anticipating you're coming to the fall next year.
Exactly.
But now from one Clark to another.
Your before and after, if you're Vanna White turning letters here, Clark Gooster added as officially a third coach. NCAA rules or committee. I guess I don't know the ins and outs of the backstory behind it, but you can officially allow another assistant coach on the staff, and Clark, who was the video, et cetera,
coordinator. Yeah. He's like the earpiece wearer, the guy that's kind of going to advise whether or not they should do like a coach's challenge or coach's review. He was kind of in charge of that, but most of his, if not all of his time last year was spent like in the press box or in the booth, like not behind the bench. Whereas it sounds like he will be more of a behind the bench in a behind the bench role for this year. Yeah. And that was a recent change from the NCAA. It's got to do with like a paid third coach. They had a goalie coach that was on a volunteer basis. And I'm blanking on his name. I think his first name was Matt. I can't remember what his last name was, but sometimes you saw him on the bench last year. But now, so you can have three paid coaches on the bench during the game. And so if you look at, and I believe that change like was made official maybe the beginning of July. You can see if you go on USCHO, like their latest like 12 to 20 like news items are all teams hiring a third coach. So that time period must have, the calendar where that period of availability to hire a third coach must have opened relatively recently, because it seems like everyone is making this hire. And so, yeah, he was already sort of in the program in a lesser role. Now he's kind of fully fledged assistant coach. So no real surprise. Congrats to Kuster. And I guess condolences to those who didn't get the position, if there was any other applicants.
Me.
But and I wonder what happened to I wonder what happened to the volunteer goalie coach, because I don't know if they can do the volunteer coach. I think this may have replaced the volunteer role. So I'm not sure if that's a possibility anymore.
I mean, you could have a it's just a guy hanging out at that point, right? A volunteer coach.
It's the NCAA. One thing they love doing is coming up with regulations
for no reason,
and some pointless ones at that. So, yeah, it wouldn't be past them to say, no, you cannot have free help anymore. So, but congrats to Kuster. We look forward to your very valuable contributions to the coaching staff.
And then, so that's kind of all the news notes items. We do have the all-time vote results in the snub, but I believe, or the snub team, and are some questions as well. So, but I do believe, Andrew, you said that you've got a sponsor. That we've got a sponsor here.
I did line up a sponsor. I got to pull it up here.
Today.
I haven't read this one yet.
We do appreciate, obviously, all of our sponsors. And
we got a new one this week, too.
We got a new one. And, it's just great to know that they really recognize the importance of the integrity of the Husky Hockey Podcast and our commitment to outstanding journalism and effectiveness.
Here. From our perspective, this is a difficult show to produce, and
got to keep the lights
time consuming, and we always have a great time figuring out the technical aspects of hooking up mics and headphones, and there's always a good 5-minute stretch there at the beginning of recording this where we just have to collaborate everything. So this is just to say, yes, we very much appreciate it. I will say, though,
I had problems with my microphone here before this show, but it was really cute hearing Luke using my microphone to sing Let It Go with the headset on. So, I was like, that might be in his future. I mean, he screwed up a lot of settings, and I had a lot of things to do. But, the joy of parenthood right there is that cute little moment.
For the first second after you said "Let It Go," I thought you said "Let It Be."
Oh, I don't think.
And so there was a weird sort of a weird disconnect there between going from imagining a kid singing "Let It Be" to a kid singing "Let It Go." For a split second there, I had some deep respect for Luke. I'll say that, but.
No,
not that I don't have respect for him.
No. I don't know a lot of kids.
How old is he?
I don't know a lot of 3-year-olds jamming out to Let It Be. Yeah.
3-year-olds? I was going to say, if he's 3 years old and already picking up on the Lennon McCartney songbook, he's got some promise.
His B-side is Imagine. I'm sorry, Gen Z. B-side refers to the old records that usually have one side.
See, now you gotta go into explain what a record is. But
no, vinyl's
before we get too sidetracked.
Vinyl's coming back, so
that's right. Okay. That's false.
No, B-sides not necessarily. Anyway, we have a sponsor. So
yep. Let me pull it up here. All right, got it. Great. All right, today's podcast is brought to you by Hanson CBD Oil. Founded in Big Lake, Minnesota, Hanson CBD Oil has been satisfying customers since its inception in 1956. CBD stands for cars, boats, and decks, and Hanson CBD oil is your go-to oil for cleaning, for cleaning, you guessed it, cars, boats, and decks. This multi-surface oil can be used on all metal and wood products and is especially formulated to tackle any grease, dirt, and grime. Listeners to the Huskies Hockey Podcast can receive 20% off their first order by using the promo code HUSKY at HansonsCBD.com. That's Hansons, HANSONS, CBD.com, promo code HUSKY. Hanson's CBD oil has been around for nearly 70 years, and they're not changing their name. Please don't prank call them using a Cheech and Chong impression. It was barely funny the first time and really not funny the 50th time. Hanson's offers no medical products, and if you have any medical questions, please seek a medical professional. Hanson's CBD oil, because you just can't clean your deck without it. Hanson's CBD.
Thank you so much to Hanson's for sponsoring us in the Husky Hockey Podcast. So we got our all-time results for the all-time Husky Hockey Podcast. Yes. I realized that, like, for the, it's probably anticlimactic because people could look at it on Twitter. I probably should have had it vote like in a Google form or something like that for a little bit of, secrecy or whatnot. But that's not the case. Maybe next time we do this, I'll go ahead and do that. But you thought that you were gonna end up in third at the beginning with your guess, and I would say actually you ended up second. You got 33% of the vote.
Really?
Yep. And not only that, you actually jumped out to an early lead too. So that you were definitely in the
that was from all the mail-in ballots.
I
right?
Stopped the vote, I think, is actually what you were.
So I was waiting. It was those late ballots that came in
for Go Huskies Woo. Who ended up taking it?
Smells fraudulent,
right? Doesn't it? Just feels icky. So he probably bribed up. But Zamora and myself, I was in third with 14%, barely over Euro with 13%. So 40% of the vote went to Go Huskies Woo, 33 to you, then 14 and 13. And
well,
I think kind of my big thing, I realized I just went too old, and I think I should have gone maybe a little bit more, recent names. I think, Hanu and Satterdalen isn't really ruffling the feathers for a lot of the for
the fact that we didn't know how to pronounce
heinous,
Hanu, however you pronounce it, probably didn't fare too well for you.
But
yeah, that's possible. I mean, so my big regret, and we talked a little bit about it on the show, I reached for LeBlanc.
Yep.
So my big thing, if I were to do it again, how I did my research, I really didn't look at stat sheets, which I think you sort of maybe
honed in on that hardcore.
You're just kind of looking at the all-time points leaders, essentially. Yep. I stayed away from it in the sense that I didn't want to be swayed by the numbers entirely. I probably should have consulted a little bit more, though, in retrospect. I think I would have been happiest. I should have just taken Cullen in the first round instead of LeBlanc, and then tried when I got Dowd in the later rounds as sort of my extra forward, try to get LeBlanc in that pick. Because it sounds like no one really is in a hurry to pick LeBlanc. So I overrated him. I think if I would have swapped out Cullen with basically Cullen for Dowd, and then just keep LeBlanc on the team, I would have been happier with that. I still don't think I would have won, basically because Go Huskies Woo is a Go Huskies Woo, and also he had Finger. Yeah. So whoever took Finger was like odds-on favorite to win the fan poll. So I don't think it would have put me over the top. I just would have been a little bit happier with my team.
I mean,
and the one thing I have to chalk up to that is my age.
Yeah.
If
Exactly.
I was more familiar, like seeing Cullen play as a Husky, it would have stood out more in my head. And that's my fault for not factoring that into my decision making. So that was but I was really happy with the rest of the team that I had. I like I thought the Hedeken pick was great. And I liked how the rest of the team, and I do like that I did have a variance of the eras.
Just for reference, Andrew's team, Drew LeBlanc, Johnny Bradzinski, Andreas Nodal up front, Hedeken and Perbix on the back end with Scotty Meyer in goal, Dowd and Anhorn, which I still think is quite the pick there as your extra defense. But
and perhaps, I mean, you're saying that you might have been hampered by picking a lot of old players. I may have been benefited with the amount of newish players that I had on my team. So, I mean, I think there is a recency bias built into Twitter users. The demographics of Twitter users are just going to skew a little younger. So perhaps my philosophy worked out in that regard. But yeah, looking at because when you mentioned Joe Motzko, I am familiar with him. Again, he's before my time as, on campus. But yeah, I was shocked. I know he played in the NHL. Isn't he on the Stanley Cup for playing in a shift for the Ducks in their cup run? So I'm certainly familiar with him, but if you would have asked me how many points he had as a Husky, I would have been 50 plus points off. I had no idea he had such a good career for the Huskies. So guys like that, I didn't even consider. And so it would have been helpful at least to look at the list just to give me the ballpark of what I'm dealing with here. Because then it worked against me with LeBlanc because the Hobie really skewed me towards that. Looking at the rest of his career, yeah, he's underwhelming from a point production standpoint. And so it's it's just dumb. I should have just kept it simple. Cullen was second on my list for as far as forwards go. It's the emotions they overtook me. With Drew, and I don't regret picking him. It's just I would have been able to pick him later, and I would have gotten a better pick in the first round.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean that's the whole thing is how you value people in everything. It can be so different from person to person. That's what made the draft, I think, so interesting. I mean, you look at Zamora drafting Gepford with his third pick. I mean, I thought that was incredibly interesting because I was like, I'm going to pick goalie last because just because I think, you go through the top 4 goalies, you're still going to get a solid goalie, so.
Right.
And that actually.
Although I do think he picked the best goalie. Yeah. I'll say that.
But at the same time is that, it kind of shows also on the snub list because as I was going through calculating all the votes for all the snub, there were so many people or so many goalies here that were even picked that I was like, wow, that's quite the name that you pulled. So that was kind of interesting when it comes to that. So, if you want, let's go through the snub list then. The Husky Hockey Podcast fan listener snub team, which I got to find a better name for. But it's the list of, I just sent out a Google form, put it out on my socials and said, hey, who did we miss? And
so you had them fill out the exact number of players that we all picked.
Yep.
4 forwards, 3 defensemen.
And then I combined everybody's.
And they just go
every.
How many submissions? How many raw submissions did we get?
About 40. Yeah,
really?
This was a lot more work than I thought it would be. And we still ended up with ties in positions. So,
all right,
which really emphasizes how hard this was to even pick because
I thought when I asked you how many, I thought you were going to say 8. So that's good.
Looking at this team, this team's good. I have no problem.
So now, okay, so you picked whoever came the top 4 forwards out of all the submissions. And then, okay, so hit me.
Perfect.
What do we
For
got?
forward. The leading forward getter in the snub team, Ben Hanowski.
Okay.
And then the other 2 starting forwards, Robbie Jackson and Patrick Newell.
Solid.
My biggest snub, I think, is probably the one that I should have got for defense, Duvie Westcott. I should have picked Duvie as my last.
We discussed that. Yeah.
And Kevin Gravel on defense.
Okay.
Brian Lietza was in goalie. Now,
Really?
We had Lietza, we had Montgomery, we had Dan Dunn, we had Jeff Smith, we had
Wazowski,
we had Wazowski, right? We had a whole list of goalies. We had a Tim Boron answer. So, I was really surprised in the depth of answers for goalie.
Did Castor? Did he?
Castor got votes? Yep.
I'm trying to think.
Yep.
Trying to think the recency bias, if there was anything. I'm shocked that Lietza was the number 1 goalie out of that. But
so I think
I had to I texted you shortly after that, doing some more digging about goalies. Mike Lee's name was brought up.
Mike Lee, obviously.
Sort of. Well, his name was kind of trashed by a couple of other people on our show.
I did kind of trash him.
I think I've. What's that?
I kind of trashed him.
I don't think you.
I did.
You did. Okay.
Well, he didn't beat North Dakota. That's my whole crux about everything is that he did not beat North Dakota once. Farringer.
Yeah, I feel
Farringer,
like he is
another one that was pretty popular on the list.
Listed. Okay. But I just can't imagine Lietza. I think because I did some digging, especially on the goalies, Lietza's save percentage in his career was in the 880s. I know it's different eras, but his numbers don't really translate very well to modern day norms. But again, he was the starter for several years. I think basically Renak would have broken all of his longevity records. So wins, any of the counting stats, just because of the fact that Renak was there for 5 years. I think Lietza was the full-time starter for 4 years, something like that. So he has the benefit of being the guy for a prolonged period, which if you went to games in the 90s, Lietza was a main part of a lot of those teams. So it makes sense. It just still surprises me because I figured there would have been more recent.
Yeah, especially as we were
options.
talking about how, going Saturday all in and, for me and not going recent, but going with Lietza, that's surprising. That's a good point.
But Mike Lee seems to be a guy that I'm not going to call him a controversial player, but it seems like a guy where you either love him or you hate him. There seems to be no real middle ground with him. I'm more on the love him side. I appreciate the arguments against him, and I understand them. Not beating North Dakota is a big one. Trust me. But I came up to the conclusion, because I think it was brought up when Go Huskies Woo took Renak. I said, you know what? I was just spitballing. I'm like, you know what? I might take Lee over Renak, which I think really did not sit well with him. I think I'm going to double down on that, just on the Renak versus Lee point.
Okay.
Of those two, I might even put Wazowski above both of them. So I'm not even saying Lee is even in the pantheon of the top 5 goalies that Huskies have, or maybe in the top 10. I don't know. The tricky part here is, and this maybe gets into the more general problem of comparing eras and then comparing stats across eras. Because you look at Mike Lee's stats versus David Renak's stats. Lee beats him on most metrics. Again, not those counting stats like the wins and shutouts and stuff like that and minutes played, because Renak played for 5 years and he was the main starter for most of that time, whereas Lee was basically here for 2.5 years. So he's going to have a lot of those counting stats in Renak's favor. But save percentage-wise, goals against, Lee beats him on most metrics. Renak didn't have I think his 920 was his high watermark. I took much more detailed notes, and I was trying to find them earlier today, and I lost them. So my apologies. I would have had more detailed arguments here. But trust me, when I did do the research, and so in terms of save percentage, Lee comes out better than Renak. The problem there, though, is save percentage isn't a great metric. Big difference between the time at Lee's playing days versus Renak. St. Cloud was a much different team in those two eras. In the 09 to 12 window, 2010, he was there 09 to 12 is when Lee was there. If you look on like CHN and you look at like shots for and shots against, in all of those years, St. Cloud was outshot as a team, meaning the majority of the shots in each game were taken by the opponent, meaning that Lee had more of a workload to face versus the teams that Renak was on. Those are all teams where St. Cloud was the offensively more producing team. So they were leading on shots on goal. They had more shots on goal versus shots against. Generally speaking, I think the 1920 season, which was like Larson's down year, I think they were outshot as a team that year. But for the bulk of his time here, St. Cloud outshot their opponent, meaning that Renak didn't see as much time as Lee did. So your save percentage is going to be in flux there because, in one sense, your save percentage is going to be higher if you see more shots. You're going to have an opportunity to have a higher save percentage because you just see a lot more rubber. And you can give up 4 goals, but if you see 45 shots, your save percentage is still going to be over 90%. Whereas if you see 20 shots a game, which Renak did several times, and you give up 3, your save percentage is going to be under 9. So I think there can be a bit of a deceiving stat. I wish there was better goalie metrics. I wouldn't be surprised if there are better goalie metrics with, the stats and sabermetrics revolution in sports now. But as far as goalie metrics go, I wish there was a way to quantify like quality of chances and weighing that versus quantity of chances. Yeah. And then also like the amount of game time that was in your defensive zone versus the offensive zone. And so what I'm saying is, even though the save percentage difference is in Mike Lee's favor, I'm not automatically going to give him the points there. What I'm saying is it ultimately kind of comes down to an eye test. From what I can remember is Lee just had – so because he's playing on a team that usually gets outshot, I feel like – and this is just from memory, which is a very unreliable source. I feel like he stole more games than Renak did just because of like I said, the assignment was different. His team was mainly on its heels versus Renak's teams were mostly an offensive juggernaut. So I feel like Lee stole some more games, and I feel like the bleeders from Renak stood out more because the action wasn't so heavily tilted in the defensive zone. So those were more letdown opportunities. Now, for your North Dakota point, yes, it's true. Lee never beat North Dakota, and Renak did fairly well against North Dakota. Difference there is North Dakota is a much better team during Lee's time than Renak's time. So the quality of opponent isn't exactly apples to oranges. I'll also say
Fahringer's first start was at the Ralph and shut him out.
I think you're right.
4-0.
Well, and so it was that 2011-2012 team, which Lee got hurt. It was his statistically best season, but he only played not even half the year, 40% of the year maybe. Start of the year and then got hurt. I believe at the time we thought that injury was going to derail him for the rest of the year, but he was able to come back later in the year, and he had a decent playoffs. That's when they beat Omaha in the home series,
which really doesn't mean
the
much.
Final 5, which then he lost to
everybody beats Omaha in the playoffs.
But he played that Wisconsin series that you and Zamora went to. So that was later in that season as well. So he had that good year, but again, it was not a full season, and it's tricky to extrapolate whether or not he would have been able to keep up that pace if you played the entire season. But yeah, I believe that North Dakota series is where Farragher stepped in because that would have been right when Lee got hurt. And so, yes. So Lee never beat North Dakota. I'll say this about a Renack. Renack never beat an Atlantic hockey team. So, I mean, there's that argument. I even double checked that because I know they played,
but not for me.
I know they. I wanted to double check that because I know they played that Robert Morris in-season tournament in would have been the 18-19 season, Larson's first year, and they got smoked by Union, and then they played Robert Morris the next day. And just to make sure that I wanted to make sure that if he would have beaten Robert Morris because they won that game, but Jeff Smith played that game. So Renack did not beat an Atlantic. He was 0 for 2 in his career against the Atlantic hockey teams. The flip side to that is Lee, yes, won the Northern Michigan game, but the Wisconsin game, he got pulled in. Mm-hmm. And so Dan Dunn finished that game. Lee gave up 3 in the first period. So I can't say that Mike Lee was that much better in the NCAA tournament than Renack is. In conclusion, I'll say it's pretty close.
I can't believe you said that. You lost your notes, and then you've been able to rattle off all.
This is all off the top of my head. The other bullet point is, if this means anything, might mean that scouts and professional teams had more faith in Lee. Lee made it to the NHL. I don't know if he actually got in a game, but I know that Phoenix/Arizona, whatever they were called back then, called him up. Again, I'm not even sure if he got in the game, but he was an AHLer for them. Whereas Renack, he played in the ECHL, and now he's going to play overseas. Yeah. So, I mean, Renack never really advanced in the pro ranks in North America, whereas Lee, at least on paper, made an NHL salary for a couple of games. So that's my other sort of bullet point. If we're just, again, comparing those two. And again, I might put Wazlowski above both of them. I probably wouldn't put Farragher. I would probably put Lee, what would that be, 6th on the list? So, and if you want to complain about that, I certainly understand. And I've given you these sort of bullet points as far as why Mike Lee was wanting in some categories as well. But this is just to say, these are the kind of things, the tangents that I really appreciated. And I love going down these rabbit holes. It's almost a shame that we can't, like, this isn't like a yearly idea. Like, we can't do this draft
every year.
This isn't like easily replicable because it feels like something that would be like a classic yearly episode. But unless we want to ask 2 other people next year to do it, maybe like 5 years from now.
Exactly.
We'll wait like 5 years because then we'll have 5 more years of players to consider. Maybe we'll put a pin in that several years down the road.
Dylan Anhort might be the first overall pick at that point.
That's right.
Averaging,
correct. Warren Clark might be on that list. Leo Gruba.
Well, I don't. There's one of 2 ways I can go right now because there are still the extras, the forwards and the defensemen that I can get to.
Oh, I thought you covered those. You just had the top 3.
I just did the 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and the goalie, and then we talked about Litsa, and then Mike Lee, and then you went on your thing.
Sorry, did derail you. Please, bring them up.
We're going on your tangent. We could divert really quickly into a random Mike Lee box score. I pulled one up, so let's do it. January 23rd, 2010, St. Cloud State at Minnesota. Guess who the referees were?
I thought you were going to pull up one of them. First of all, I thought you were going to bring up the 8-1 game against North Dakota.
No.
That I think he was I think he gave up the first 6.
Yeah, but no.
Anyway, so 2010 versus the Gophers.
So this is Lee's freshman year.
My guess for refs are always Marco Hunt.
Yes. And Derek Shepard.
Do they have 2? Derek Shepard. Okay.
So, St. Cloud.
Was this at Mariucci or was that St. Cloud?
Mariucci.
This would have been like the nadir of the Don Lucia days.
Yeah.
They were terrible. I think this was the year they lost to Anchorage in the playoffs.
I think so.
Either this year or the next year. But they were not good. This is I like to refer to it as the Jacob Cephas years.
And that he did have an assist this game. Cephas did. Yeah,
really?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's when everyone thought like Patrick White was going to be the next big thing for Minnesota hockey.
Oh God.
What was he? Grand Rapids? I
Would
think?
this have been?
So
I think so. Would this have been Kangas?
This was Kangas. Yep.
So did we say who won this game? If Kangas was in the net, I'm going to say the Gophers did.
St. Cloud won 4-1.
Really?
4-1. Drop Minnesota to 12-12-2 on the season. St. Cloud was 16-7-3 after this. We were, to your point, we were outshot 43-21, and we won 4-1.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
talking about getting outshot by 40 or so.
And you said this was Mike Lee in net.
In net, yep. So Mike Lee, 42 out of 43 saves.
Would this have been the Friday or the Saturday game?
Saturday.
So did they play in St. Cloud on Friday?
Or
was this the rare 2-gamer at Mariucci?
Let's take a look. Yep, they played in St. Cloud. Yep. And it was a 4-3 win by St. Cloud State. Dan Dunn played in that game.
Okay. You said this was January of 2010? Yeah. Okay.
And
I would have been at that game for sure.
Yeah. Dan Dunn, his record improved to 9-2 after this win.
Really?
Double D.
So let's get back to the Mariucci game.
The Mariucci game.
Let's see if I can. Lash has got to be a scorer.
He is not. He is not a scorer.
Garrett Rowe.
Garrett Rowe did not score.
Did they score any power play goals?
No power play goals. Yes.
Really?
One power play goal, and I will give you 1,000 guesses. I can give you the roster, and you will not guess the goal scorer.
For the power play
on the power play goal. I can't imagine he has more than this one goal. I got to see how many goals he's had.
But he was playing on the power play? Was it like the empty netter? Is it like some random defenseman?
It's a random defenseman.
Does it just say PP?
Yeah, it's a random defense. It was the first goal of the game. 2 minutes in. Nick Leddy got called for hooking. And then, first.
Brett Barta.
That's a good guess.
Not though.
It is not. Taylor Johnson.
Well, I could have gotten there maybe within a day. He's not the worst, the deepest cut.
I mean, he's not. He has more goals than Clark Booster, though. So I guess that's a plus. He ended the season, or he ended his career with.
I would say that 10 goals. Okay.
So.
Yeah, he was decent.
From Sam Zabkowitz and Garrett Rowe. And then Huskies made it 2-0. David Eddy scored from Garrett Rowe and Tony Mosey.
So it'd have been Mosey's 40-point year.
Yep.
So.
And then early on in the second period, Fessler scored from Lash and Raboyne. And then in the third period, Minnesota ruins Mike Lee's shutout bid with Cade Fairchild with the goal from Aaron Ness and Jacob Cepas.
Olympian Aaron Ness. And probably beer leaguer Jacob Cepas.
And then empty net goal to make it 4-1. Jared Fessler from Ryan Lash.
So what, 3 assists for Lash?
2 assists.
Or no? And how many for Rowe? 2 assists each.
And then 2 goals for Fessler.
Pretty good. What was the attendance?
10,022.
Really? So still, even in a down year, still cranking them out.
Let's see at the quickly the box score for the 4-3 minute or St. Cloud victory.
I'm gonna say for attendance.
What do you got?
58-34.
61-78. Yep.
Really? Still over 6,000 back then. Okay. I thought that might have been because I started going like to every game in 2007. And that era seemed like after the 08 recession, it seemed like the top would dip from that 61, 62. I mean, they used to get closer to 7,000, like in the early 2000s, but it seemed right around those late aughts, it would peak at like 58, 59. But it sounds like it's still, it was probably through the WCHA, and then it's probably tailed off since then, kind of drastically. But well, that's good. I always like going through the random box scores.
So we had St. Cloud jumped up to a 3-0 lead in this game. I think I remember that.
In the home game?
Yep. I think I remember that. Just being like, this is kind of boring. We're already up 3-0.
How far into the game?
Oh,
like 10 minutes in?
No. Rose scored the third goal.
When did they score the third goal?
At 1951.
Of the first, though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Raboyne from Fessler and Lash. Fessler from Lash and LeBlanc. Rowe from Zabkowitz. And then the second period, Minnesota scored with Tony Lucia from Aaron Ness. David Eddy answered from Tony Mosey and Taylor Johnson. What a series for Taylor Johnson. Goal and assist.
And Zabkowitz, Fessler. Good series.
And then to make it 4-2, Cepas from Aaron Ness.
There it is.
And then on the power play, after Nick Oslin got a contact to the head elbowing call, Jake Hansen scored.
Would that have been a 5-minute? Was it a major on Oslin?
It was just contact to the head was still only 2 minutes there in these.
That was also Marco Hunt reffing this game.
This one.
Yeah. He seemed to always get the Huskies go first games every single time, and they always. I mean, what does the penalty log? Is that kind of full? Because these games would tend to get out of hand, and Hunt would struggle at controlling them.
10 penalties
from my memory.
5 penalties for Minnesota, 10 or 4 for St. Cloud. So not terrible, but
average.
But Jake Hansen from Cepas and Jordan Schroeder.
Oh yeah, remember him too.
He came in highly touted on the Gophers.
Yes.
And then that was it. And then it was 4-3, and then third period, and no scoring there in the third period. So 3-0 lead for the Huskies, and they were able to hold on. So that was your random box scores.
It's a good bit.
We'll let's head back to the.
So anyway, the infamous fish story.
Yeah, you got these other two players.
We said his name earlier, the extra forward, Joe Motzko. Yep.
Really?
And it was really interesting because it was...
Well, who were the other guys that were tied with him?
The big one was Andrew Gordon. So the fact that Andrew Gordon and Joe Motzko were they would kind of both overtake each other as the time went on for the voting. As the week went on,
it was a knockdown, drag-out battle. Motzko v. Gordon.
Exactly. And then for the extra defense, this one a little bit of a surprise. Will Borgen.
And who would have been the other contender?
Spencer Meyer was the one he was tied with.
Meyer v. Borgen.
Which kind of surprised me, but I wonder if maybe Borgen got a little bit of a bump because of the contract that he just signed. That maybe he a little more relevancy kind of came in and was like, oh, he played and put him on the list. Because I would probably go Meyer over Borgen on that one, but
yeah, that's a tough one because he got Meyer's longevity, versus Borgen's NHL resume. The captaincy of Meyer, I think, might tip it in that direction. If I would have voted, I think I would have gone slight Meyer on that one.
Same here. So,
and it was between. You said it was between Motzko and
mostly,
Gordon?
There was Mike Miller had a couple, but Fessler had a couple, but it was mostly Motzko and Gordon.
Yeah, that's a tough one too. And based on the fact that I did research Motzko and was surprised to see how prolific he was, based on stat lines, I think Motzko would get the edge. I mean, I saw more of Gordon, but I don't know, that 03 team, that was the year before you came into campus, right? That 02-03 team. Because I think that was Motzko's best year. And they made the tournament that year barely. They were basically like a 500 team, but they did make the tournament, and I think he would have been their leading point scorer if I'm remembering correctly. Whereas Gordon was good, but he was never top scorer on the teams that he was on because he was with, the Lash and Rowe years. He was a little bit before too, but Joe Jensen would have been on his team, I think, for his first year. So I don't know. That's another tough one too. I could go either way, but I would say I largely agree with the Motzko pick there.
A couple other people that were, I think Hanowski was like the runaway favorite of the snubs. I mean, he was far. Everyone else was fairly close in votes.
Deerwood Bank,
exactly. Baby. Recency again, getting those loans approved. But Sampier was on a couple people's. Knipshear was on some. Decaz, and then Lazat got a couple of votes. Ianazo got a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Cronulla got some. So, but there wasn't really any that kind of eyebrow raising for me when it comes to that. Defensemen a little bit. There were a few surprise.
What surprised you?
Ben Storm got a vote.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
Colin Peters.
But again,
we had.
Yeah, we talked about Storm briefly because he's in the Jared Raby category where he could technically be a swing player, so he could play up front for you as well as in the back end. I bet you Joe Sakic was the one that submitted his name.
Derek Eastman, Lordson. Eastman actually had a few votes.
Really?
Pudlick had a couple. So there was,
Well, it was a good bit. I'm glad that we got so much response.
But like I said,
blows me away that we got that.
Like I said, though, I mean, Dean Weasler, Dan Dunn, Farringer, Wazlowski, Montgomery, Jeff Smith, Mike Lee, Farringer. Like, so it's goalies were all over the place. So.
And somehow goalies, I mean, rewind to my hour-long diatribe about Lee versus Rennick, but I'm finding that goalies might be the most, emotional. You remember them the most, or you have the clearest sort of memories about goalies. Have you been? There's that. It's like a baseball game, but it's morphed into other sports. It's the baseball version is called Immaculate Grid. Have you seen anything like that? Well, there's a hockey version. Mm-hmm. Have you played that?
No,
Puck Duco.
Yeah, I'm terrible when it comes to remembering players and where they go, especially in the pros.
Yeah, well, the baseball one, I slaughter. I'm going for guys under 1%.
Yeah, I can't do that.
I'm very good at baseball. The hockey one is much more difficult. Like, most times I can't even fill out the 9 names. And it is like, I do depend on college players, but there's always like, I struggle. The easiest ones for me to remember are goalies. It's like, I can remember goalies the best.
Sure.
But I struggle with like remembering guys that played with a bunch of different teams, because that kind of what helps you with these games is because you're trying to find out players that played with this team and that team. And I struggle to find guys. Whereas baseball, there's a bunch of guys that play. Octavio Dotel played for 12 teams or something like that. I can remember that more easily. But as a girl I knew in college that dated Octavio Dotel, as a true story. And Rafael Betancourt, who was a reliever for the Cleveland Indians briefly. But anyway, so I'm saying easier to remember goalies, but then also I'm too reliant on the college. I just don't know. And the European guys, like I can't, like when I'm thinking about like European guys, like, it seems like I can only think of Sergei Fedorov, and he played with like 2 teams. So it's like when they show you the players that the most frequent answers, I'm like, oh yeah, Richikhanov. Oh, yep, that's right. Yep, totally forgot him. Didn't know he played for the Kraken. Oh, yep, I got it now. So I struggle with that, but it's a good one. It's a good game for me to keep my wits and to cycle through names, because I'm not as good at the hockey game as I am the baseball one. Yeah. Anyway.
Questions. Let's hop over to a couple of questions we got on the off-season pod. Dan Jacobson, obviously, thank you for writing in.
He always gets – he's got the privilege of being the first question. He's like, that's our bit here for the questions. He always gets the first
the Dan
question.
Jacobson corner, but we can't really answer it because we already did about the NCHC going up to 10 or down to 8. So we already had a little bit about that. Alex Fern, who are your favorite non-SCSU broadcasters in the NCHC? Who are your favorite SCSU broadcasters? So huge shout out to KVC. And I also would be remiss if I didn't also mention that my heart goes out to KVSC too, for all the people who, with Joe's passing, who was a big tutor for a lot of people going through for KVSC. So I know that she meant a lot for not only, obviously for the athletics, but also for KVSC in general. So heart goes out to all of them, but KVSC in general, just top notch. Anything, TV, radio at St. Cloud State is a beacon of excellence. And obviously KVSC is a huge part of that. Your announcers, we've always sung your praises here. You guys are great. You guys are wonderful. So
prefer you to the TV announcers or the radio announcers. Not to cast aspersions on them, but I prefer the passion, the knowledge, and the amount of craft that the KVSC team has consistently produced. So, yeah, definite shout out and keep it up. As far as what other announcers from NCHC teams, was that the question? We had an episode we did last Christmas break.
I remember
where we ranked all the streams.
All the streams.
Now we didn't rank the stream. We ranked the streams by overall quality, not specifically the announcers, but that was part of the criteria. And
anything fish related for Omaha, they're number 1 on the list.
So anyway, the infamous fish story.
So
yeah, if you liked Omaha's anything about their broadcasts, probably skip that podcast because we didn't speak exceedingly lovingly.
Oh my God, that's what we can name their section. It's Miami, it's Western, and it's Omaha, the dead NCHC TV zone.
That's
terrible
not bad,
streams.
because I think
lumping all of the terrible streams.
Those were all bottom half.
That's what Heather Weems was doing. It was let's have them all 4. Maybe they'll realize how terrible their streams are, so they can they'll all play each other 4 times.
And they're all 3 of those are where they just pipe in their radio feed on top of the TV feed. They don't have a separate TV feed. They just patch the radio feed on top of the video, which, it saves you costs, but it's lazy. And at least with Miami's feed in particular, the video sucks.
Video's terrible,
Miami. I've said Miami's announcers I don't mind them, but their streams are tough to watch just because the video's not great. Omaha's just got the crown jewel, though, in terms of incompetence, because not only do their announcers suck, but their video is often unreliable and can be quite bad, especially if their contrast issues aren't leveled off. So not Omaha would be my answer. We had North Dakota would have been the number 1 on both of our lists. I don't know if I put their announcers number one. We were mainly putting them up top because of the quality of the video feed and the production value. It's just, it looks like a Bally Sports-esque quality feed. And Denver was up there. I don't mind Denver's announcers. The CC radio guy, Ken Landau, I like. Going back years listening to them, I like him. He kind of says it how it is and doesn't beat around the bush. I kind of like him. I wonder, maybe we have to do an updated version of that list when ASU joins the conference, because I have no idea how well their video production is. I've watched some of their games, but not enough to have a strong feeling about it. So we do have a new entrant into the conference, and we'll have to factor in their media, what they bring to the table there. But best in the conference, yeah, certainly not Duluth. Certainly, I mean, Starman. I guess we gotta consider the national CBS guys. Yeah, I'll go Denver. What about you?
I don't know, like Denver, because now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Denver has two different play-by-play guys. They have the same color guy for the most part. Charlie Post, I think is his name. He's from St. Cloud too. I for some reason I know that, and I think he's decent. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, we've already given North Dakota number one for the overall quality. I don't want to give them another number one. Anytime giving North Dakota number
one. Again, I don't really mind that Heinert or whatever his name is that does the CBS games too. He's fine. I don't think he's spectacular, but he's serviceable. So let's just stick with KVSC. Yep. I think that's the best.
Exactly. So, Johnny Mac, educated guess for letters on both the men's and the women's team. So I actually I don't really pay a lot of attention to captains and whatnot. So even going through, as I read this question before the show, I was like, who were our captains? Obviously Spencer Meyer, but
me and you both.
So even going through, so it was what Spalacy, who obviously Miller, and then
Cranola.
So
they're all gone. So they're all the entirely new captains.
All new captains. Or are you looking any specific way, or who do you think has got kind of the inside track?
Yeah, I mean, you go with the upperclassmen and sort of just general team leaders. I think mentioned too, captains are, correct me if I'm wrong, voted on by the players.
Yeah, at St. Cloud, I believe.
It's not a coach's
I
decision.
believe St. Cloud, they are voted by the players.
So that can go a lot of different ways. It's less predictable in that regard.
The fact Anhorn broke a leg and coming back makes me think Anhorn's going to be a captain.
Okabe will be doing a 5th year, so potential to see perhaps him wear a letter. Who are the other 5th-year guys? Do we have any others? Again, I'm on summertime now. It's like I gotta remind myself of who all is on this team. But I mean, you got guys like Peart is now moving into an upperclassman role. So potential that he could.
Kupka.
Kupka's a good one.
Okabe. So it's.
I mean, Mietinen's going to be a senior. Just kind of look at the old guys. I mean, Molinar, Sulquist. Just run by that name, and that a bell goes off, says that Sulquist is definitely wearing a letter.
There's no way he's not wearing a letter. Much to
my again, if Brett Larson does not have a vote, perhaps that crimps his chances. If the coaches do have a vote, he's probably wearing the C, if not just an A. So,
poor guy.
And you'd think it's weird that goalies rarely wear letters, right? Wonder why that is. I mean, I guess what's the actual tangible duties of being a captain other than the symbolic naming of a team leader? But like captains are the ones that can communicate with the officials on the ice. So when there's calls, especially like major calls, or if there's review situations, it's the players that are communicating with the refs in those circumstances are the captains or the assistant captains. If you don't wear a letter, you really can't do that. So I think that's kind of a major reason why you don't see goalies wear letters, is because it kind of would be awkward for them to leave their net to then hang out by the penalty box as they're reviewing a call. So perhaps it just logistically doesn't make sense for goalies to take on that aspect of the captaincy. So yeah, you're just kind of looking for upperclassmen and then guys that we see just, you know, from watching the games on TV or occasionally in person, just kind of grasping, you know, a guy like Garrett Raboyne back in the day, easy to see him be captain material fairly easily. Spencer Meyer was another one where it was fairly easy to connect those dots at an early age in his career at St. Cloud that he's probably going to move into that role. Sahlquist is a guy that just fits that bill for me, again, based on just anecdotal viewing of the situation. So, yeah, you know, you got guys like Lutke, now going to be a junior this upcoming year. For some reason, I don't see Miettinen being a letter wearer. A guy like Molinar wouldn't be surprised. He kind of fits that Spalacy mold, where hard worker, grinder type, and he's been around the block. And so they just don't have a ton of grizzled vets on this team, which is interesting. So even if you're not wearing a letter, I think the experienced players are going to take out a more outsized role with nurturing the young recruits that are coming in and the couple of transfers that are coming in. I mean, we've heard good things about Ports, who's coming in from North Dakota, and he's a local kid. That's another good hint. Like local guys, St. Cloud area natives tend to wear letters frequently. It would somewhat surprise me for a incoming transfer to wear a letter. But now that I'm thinking about it, I wouldn't be surprised if Ports wears a letter because of that connection. We'll see how well he accustoms himself to the locker room. But that's not a bad idea or a bad suggestion. So, yeah, it's interesting to speculate. And as far as the women's team.
Well, I just want to have my final guess on the men's team is going to be Anhorn as the captain. Assistants are going to be Okabe, Kupka, and Lutke. Boom.
I like that. I'll swap out Lutke for Ports. I like Anhorn being the C. Who else did you have for assistants?
Kupka and Okabe.
I like Okabe and I like Kupka. So I'll swap out Ports with we got to have. I think Sahlquist is going to. Oh, geez, so right. I'll say.
You know what? I'm keeping mine. Here's the thing. I'm keeping mine, but I know Sahlquist will be one.
I'll say Anhorn as the C, Sahlquist as an A, Kupka as an A, and Ports as an A. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, if I were to redo mine, I'd switch Lutke and Sahlquist. So I would have.
Okay. I might be swinging for the fences.
I think you are very much swinging for the fences with Ports. Because I mean, he's coming in. He's going to be a third line.
It's the local factor.
Third line center. I mean,
yeah, but
all we have is
look at Spalacy.
Third line center.
Spalacy was a transfer student playing on the fourth line. Sometimes the outside advisor can sort of play a Yoda type role. Look at me dropping a Star Wars reference. So perhaps young Weldie Ports is captain material. See, I can't really speak Yoda, but yeah,
very, very bad.
Keep in mind, was not able to get through the full
Yeah.
Star Wars twice. So I have a limited range for my Yoda impression. But how about the women's team? So we had to
Captain Port's
remind
movie.
ourselves there as well. There we go. Assistant captain.
All right, women's.
But you got it. So we had Taylor Lind be the captain last year.
Women's is
with
going to be women's is
Himlarova.
going to be tough just because I wish I had their roster like available, so I'd have a little bit more of a guiding point on it.
We're thinking that Lind was the captain last year, and she's coming back for 5th year. We believe it's based on trying to coordinate McHatton's reportage as far as the movement after the season. They've added a bunch of transfers and only lost 4 or 5 players from last year. Fairly young team they were. And so from what I gather, Lind is available to come back. And if she is coming back, I would assume she's going to remain captain unless that locker room is toxic. Generally don't see if there was a captain returning like Meyer did this year for the Huskies. Pretty safe bet that she'll remain captain for this coming year. Himlarova also wore an A last year. We believe she's coming back. The other 2 assistants last year were Janina Nyland and Geyer, the defenseman, who both of those were 5th-year players. So they're not coming back. So they will not be captains, obviously, because they'll not be with the team. So looking at other options for wearing A's, I'm going to throw out Emma Gentry as a possibility to wear a letter. Her stock is rising. Like Himlarova and Lind, she's emerging into a top player, at least offensively for the team. And her kind of national stock is rising too.
I was just going to say national.
I read an article that she's attending this camp for USA Hockey that, pretty select company there. Like St. Cloud hasn't had a player participate in this offseason camp, summer camp, for a few years. So realizing that her stock is sort of rising in that aspect, wouldn't be surprised if she's also getting into being an upperclassman as well. So I think that's a natural guess. And I always like to look at defensemen as potential captains as well, as far as like guessing which of these defensemen are going to be selected as a captain. Your guess is as good as mine, but I got Gentry. I think that's a decent pick, and I would again assume that both Himlarova and Lind are going to retain their letters. Any other speculation from your end as far as who you think might have the edge there?
I mean, no, I think you kind of hit it on the head there. I think I don't see them changing ship when it comes to captains, especially with the success that they have been having as of late and is expected to continue on having. I think they're definitely on the right track, and a change in that's not I wouldn't be in the cards, but I do think Emma is on track. I'm excited to watch a lot more games here this year. That's going to be kind of my main focus too. Because you said they're all on what, Big Ten Plus?
You can get them all through Big Ten Plus. You can get a season package for that, which I probably will do this year. And it might be just like $50 for the season. I don't think it's terribly expensive to get the add just for the women's package, and you're getting all WCHA women's games for that. So. I think there might be ones that play on the Big Ten Network, the actual channel that would be blacked out, but for the most part, you're going to get the majority of the games through that app. So yeah, definitely we'll be doing that this coming year. And it's interesting to speculate. Like, we'll be able to know what the rosters, how they're kind of finalized by mid-September. We looked at the dates last year when they announced captains. That was around the 20th-ish of September, a couple weeks before the season starts. So, practices, I think, start in earnest, once the semester starts in late August, early September. So once they kind of hit the ice, gain some chemistry, see how the locker room shakes out, that's how these questions are going to be answered eventually. But it's always nice to speculate, but it's tough to do because the roster still, especially in the women's side, is still a little bit in flux.
Especially because women's information is so hard to get in general.
It's just terrible. Difficult to.
Go Huskies woo. Who would win 1v1, Mario or Link? I don't think this is much of a contest. I think Link has so many more weapons at his disposal, and Mario's biggest weapon is stomping on him. I think it's kind of a no. I mean, you can throw in any really. I guess like if he has the Tanuki suit, how big those or if he has a Hammer Brothers suit, how much those hammer. But yeah, cat suit. I mean, he's going to claw Link. Come on, no, I don't think so. So, but if you want to always, you can go 99 stock, throw it on Final Destination and Smash Brothers, and just have them go to town. No weapons, Final Destination, how it's supposed to be played for Smash. So, and then also he said, any marriage advice for Patrick Newell, who is getting married. So, yes, Patrick Newell, congratulations, and good luck. That's my advice. So it's listen, communicate. That's kind of the biggest thing, and communications, obviously key when it comes to any type of a relationship, and communicate with your partner about everything. That's kind of my key. So
that is good. I'm sure he's going to
appreciate it.
Receive that advice
that he
from you. As the unmarried host of this podcast, I defer to the married man with this. So everything that he just said, ditto.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, that about does it on this episode of the Husky's Hockey Podcast.
So look at that. Breezy 215.
See, it's not like... oh, well. It is what it is. I mean, it's once a month. So
that's like a regular season podcast,
exactly.
Essentially.
So thank you so much for listening. We'll be back probably next month. I'll give you guys a heads up beforehand, but thank you so much again for listening. If news breaks, we'll be here to put it together, put our own spin onto it, and we'll think of division names or pod names. At least,
yep. Send us your best suggestions.
At least by the beginning of the Arizona State season. So I'm Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. And Andrew, you can reach him via email.
Got an email address, huskieshockeypodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email.
Sounds good. And until next time, go Huskies. Woo!
Woo!